I'm Catherine Flashner, and this is The Truth Is, a podcast about discovering what it means to live your truth. Even when it's messy, when it unravels the plans you thought you had, and invites you to step into the unknown. Each week, we explore practices, stories, and conversations that illuminate the ways we find and follow our own path. This is a space to slow down, ask questions, and uncover what's been quietly waiting inside of you. If it resonates, subscribing, following, and engaging with the show really supports me in bringing more people into the conversation. Thank you for being here. Welcome to The Truth Is. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to The Truth Is. I am Catherine. And if you've been listening along the last few weeks, you know that my curiosity has taken us to exploring the wisdom of our bodies. We talked to Sam a few weeks ago about rest is ritual. We talked to Cindy last week about permission to feel and explore it all, our sensuality, our relationship to pleasure. And related to all of this conversation, how do I connect back to my ability to feel? And how does that lead me to a deeper sense of truth within me? Culturally, we hear a lot today about the nervous system. And if I'm being honest, as I've heard about it over the last several months, I'm like, I know I have one and I know I need to regulate it, but beyond understanding it conceptually, I don't know what it feels like in my body. Then I came across my guest for today. My guest today is Nahid de Belgeonne. She is a somatic movement educator and the founder of the Human Method and the Soothe program, which is a nervous system recalibration for high-functioning people who are outwardly capable and quietly exhausted. Raising my hand. I am and have been one of those. And her personal story is one that I saw myself in, and I know a lot of people like me probably can too. She built her professional identity inside fashion, tech, publishing, wellness startups, and her story is one that we can relate to. She was rewarded for composure, capability, chronically being in motion. And then she shares after a near-death experience and the realization that she was living in what she calls the state of high functioning collapse. She began restoring herself and created her method from that lived experience. I love how I continue to find on this podcast that it is through someone's lived experience that their curiosity takes them on a journey to discover what's next, what she needed, and now what she offers to others. Now, the premise of my entire show is exploring what it means to live truthfully beneath the inherited assumptions about who we should be. And this conversation sits right inside of that, because if our bodies are braced by the very systems telling us to improve, optimize, regulate, then how do we actually know and feel what's true? Here is my conversation with Nahid de Belgeonne. Nahid, welcome to The Truth Is.
Hello, Catherine. How are you this morning?
I'm good. Meeting with you first thing on a Monday it's a good tone to set for my week.
Great. Let's hope so.
How are you? How are you two in today?
So I'm really good. I had a lovely sleep, and that always determines how I'm going to be the next day.
Yeah.
And I'm at a place in my life where I really focus on the things that I want to do on any given day. And I start with that. So I've had a super calm, productive day. I'm feeling good.
In coming across your work, we live in a culture that's talking a lot about the nervous system and regulating the nervous system. And I'm like, I know I have this thing that I need to regulate. I don't really know how, but I'll try to take some deep breaths. And then coming across your work, I was like, oh, that makes sense. I kind of get it. And so I was so grateful for the chance to talk to you directly, not just because of how clarifying your work is in understanding, but how you speak to a broader cultural conundrum that it
Mm,
feels like we're living in. And so I'm so
yeah.
grateful to bring you into this inquiry. But I'd love to start with, in your words, a little bit about who you are and the work that you do in the world.
Sure. So, thank you for those very kind words.
Yeah.
My emphasis is on making it very clear because I think the culture that we live in makes it so unclear. Because when
Hmm.
it's unclear and you mistrust the signals from your body, you're really easy to manipulate and sell things
Mm.
to, right?
Yeah.
And that's probably why, clever women are getting to their 40s, 50s thinking, I don't know who I am and I don't understand how to connect to myself because all the things we've been shown, they work for a bit and then they don't work. And so I got really interested in why is that? And I think it's because the wellness world has now become a mirror of the culture that we live in. So it's
Hmm.
pushing us the same stuff. And it feels very like an add on, a clip on, if you like, rather than actually examining what makes us dysregulated, what makes us thrive well. So, my story is that I come from quite a dysregulated, volatile background, and I was never taught to self soothe
Hmm.
because my parents, bless them, were never taught to self-soothe. They just knew, that they had a very volatile relationship that was passed on to us. I mean, the whole house was so dysregulated, but it was very normalized at the time, and they were dysregulated because they had come to London in the 60s and they had moved away from their safety net of community and family. And even though they were living in London, it was still quite a hostile environment. And so that must have done something to their nervous systems, what, they weren't even aware of because
Hmm.
they just had to get on and survive. And so that was how I was brought up. I'm sure, like many, many women and many people, actually, you just work hard to try and escape something,
Yeah.
perhaps your background, perhaps one's misery at living in a world that feels so dysregulated, whatever it is, it's constantly a getting away from this. And I just got really interested in that. And I had studios in central London. I had about five in its heyday, and we offered power plates. I don't know if you remember those. I was the first person to open up independent power plate studios in the UK. Then I added in kind of really slow, creative, somatic yoga and short fitness classes. And so everybody who came along, it looked like they were all doing the right things. They had high powered jobs, but I saw in them something that I saw in myself, which was that we were all seemingly doing the right things, but underneath that layer, couldn't sleep.
Yeah.
People had fertility issues, or we were really kind of angry, or, we'd get very tearful. Or there's a whole heap of stuff going on that showed that what we were doing wasn't
Hmm.
really hitting home. It wasn't kind of integrating into our lives. And that's how I got really interested in the nervous system. So it was from that moment on that I teach movement to help you to regulate,
Hmm.
or rather to create a more flexible nervous system. I kind of prefer that because flexible implies movement
Hmm.
and regulate implies a place that you get to and then it's immovable. It's like a static thing. It's a bit like how we now view rest. It's kind of a thing that we attain, but when we're in it, we're not really in it. We don't really get it. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so I was just very, very interested in the nervous system, and I was teaching movement to help people to cultivate a much more flexible nervous system so that you can expand to meet your challenges and then you can retract to repair and recover from them.
Mm.
And that way have live in a more kind of fully expressed human condition.
Hmm. Well, one thing I love about what you just walked us through, thank you, is I love like that it was your own curiosity about
Yes.
like your condition and your experience and what you were witnessing in the people around you that led to this. I think that that's so important.
Yes.
That like was the thread for this journey. But I wonder if it's a good moment for anyone listening that is like, what is dysregulation and regulation? How do you bring someone into understanding the difference in those two states?
Sure. Well, I think it might be helpful if I explain what I think the nervous system is.
Please, yeah.
And it's your brain, your spinal cord, and all the messages that travel from that into your organs and body and
Mm-hmm.
back into spinal cord and brain. And we once upon a time, we used to think we were a brain with a body, but
Mm-hmm.
we now understand we're a body with a brain. So there's more signals coming from your body to the brain than the other way around. And so that sense is called interoception. So that's what I
Mm-hmm.
help you to hone your interoceptive sense. And what that means is that instead of squashing down kind of emotions or trying to be still with them, you can express them and get them out and then listen to what that was telling you to do, because anger, there'll be a reason for your anger. If
Yeah.
you're really upset, there'll be a reason for your upset. And so what I was seeing, I guess, was people were applying their practices to try and use them like a sticking plaster on top of the problem. But actually, what this work allows you to do is it allows you to get very curious about, well, why am I behaving like that? Or where did I learn this behavior? Or why am I feeling like this? And to be in a much better relationship with yourself.
Similar to what you experienced like in your studios, I am and have been very much one of those people.
Yes.
I grew up a very serious athlete. I played collegiate sports. I was a collegiate coach. And then as I entered the corporate world, power yoga has been a big part of my life. And it's funny in hindsight, as I've looked back on like several years, I'm like, okay, I was going and doing the practice and feeling good and empowered. And you talk about this idea of like the afterglow.
Yes.
But then in the stillness or in the moments where the afterglow wears off, I'm like, oh, wait, there's still things in my life that I'm like not tending to and maybe avoiding. And one of them is, I've wanted to make this big career change into more creative work that I'm doing now.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting to look at the years of like kind of kicking that can down the road and looking, or you say it well, this idea of like, we have to push harder and work harder to get through it. And it's a total paradigm shift.
Yeah, that's really interesting and not uncommon what you say about your kind of pathway through this. And I'll give you a really great example of that. I've always had very tight hips.
Yeah.
And I used to run, I used to kickbox, I did a lot of yoga, I taught yoga. And every time I went to a massage therapist, they'd always say to me, "Oh my God, your hips are so tight. You really need to do yoga." And I was like, "I teach yoga." And then my older yoga teachers kind of push my thighs down in lotus position and get me to go down. And of course, my legs would spring back up again.
Yeah.
And then when I did my Pilates training, I was like, great, I'm going to learn the secret of like letting go of the tension in my pelvis. Where is
Yeah.
it coming from? I don't understand. And they gave me loads of exercises and it didn't work. And it was only the somatic work that helped me. One day I was in lotus position. I was like, oh, wow, how did that happen? So
Yeah.
it's not about more doing, it's about more being, more understanding, getting curious about, I've always moved in this way. And so I wonder what it would be like to move my hip joint in this way or this way or this way.
Mm-hmm.
What does that do? What new experience does it feed into the nervous system?
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't unlearn things, but you introduce new learning into the system. So when you're moving in your same habitual way, and mine was always work harder, push harder, stretch harder,
Yeah.
be harder in everything that you do. And then one day the legs will go down. But actually, what my experience has taught me is that you don't do that at all. You don't push into it. You actually learn how to let go. So it's almost like you're taking your brain on a great big journey and lots of other things that it could do. And then when it comes back to the original conundrum, it's
Yeah.
resolved it. So I work with movement at the beginning of the process, which is your brain,
Mm-hmm.
to kind of help to introduce new experiences to the end of the process, to the muscle at the end. So the messages that are firing from brain to muscle, that's kind of the space that I work in.
Mm.
And it has changed everything for me because even though I knew conceptually that trying hard won't, that isn't where you learn. I understood that conceptually, but I didn't understand that practically at all until it, I embodied that experience and then I understood it because
Yeah.
it had an immediate effect.
Yeah, I love that you brought it back to like the revelation inside of yourself and inside of your own life. That sounds like it was like you go on this seeking quest of like, wait,
Yes.
what, like, how do I actually access the relaxing in the hips or
Yes.
or back? How do I actually access what my body is telling me? And it's funny, like, I love the idea that you introduce in your work that it is about harmonizing body and mind.
It's
Um,
collaboration, complete collaboration. And I think we still have this idea of the two things, one having the mind having to have some, enforce its will on the body.
mhm,
And you asked earlier about regulation versus dysregulation. Well, I don't know about you, but I was always hitting a wall. I was always on the
yeah,
edges of burnout because I didn't understand when it was too much, because this was the only pattern I knew. It was just keep working, keep working, against all odds, push through, because, you'll come out the other end. And so for me, it was being on the edges of burnout, of not burning out a few times, neuralgia, it was urticaria, which is like a skin rash. And the last thing was I almost died of a gangrenous appendicitis because I
mhm,
just didn't listen to the signals from my body that actually something was quite serious going on.
mhm,
And I think for me, that was my wake up call. But I just feel so sad that people get to they get to the end of the road before they do something about it.
mhm,
And I guess it's because we've never been taught any differently. Plus,
yeah,
if you're pushing harder actually got you places, you're going to start to equate, aren't you, the pushing
yeah,
beyond with your success. And so the whole thing becomes really wrapped up in your identity, which is interesting because your identity, of course, is formed by experience, which is movement, right?
yeah.
How we move through the world.
Yeah, as you were sharing that, it made me come to this question of, and I'll speak from where I am right now.
Please do.
I'm in a huge change professionally, and I spent 10 years like in the corporate world, more and more and more. I'm going to spend more time on the presentation. I'm going to like just nonstop.
Yeah,
And in this present chapter, the fear that comes up of like, oh, it's too risky to just be and do this differently. And I feel like I'm teetering on that. What's interesting is when I do trust that, I have so much more creative clarity
yeah.
and inspiration. And then the fear comes in of like, but you better speed up and get more done. Otherwise, this isn't going to prove out. And so I'm curious for you, what have you learned about really shifting to trusting that a new way is possible or a different way is possible?
Well, I think actually the real shift for me came
Mm-hmm.
from putting in lots of processes in place. So
Okay.
what your nervous system really loves is regularity.
Yeah.
So I had a very strict, I put in place a very strict regime, if you like, of getting up at the same time, of eating breakfast at the same time, doing some movement practice, or getting out actually is what I prefer to do. Getting out, going for a walk with the dogs, and having these immovable kind of rituals throughout the day that do not shift. I
Yeah.
also put in place after every client or a big bit of focused work. So I work 90 minutes on, 20 minutes off. And that's
Mm-hmm.
a really good way for your brain to be focused on something. It's enough time for it to focus on something. You give it some time off so it can process the focus, and then you come back in. And it
Yeah.
has been working for me so beautifully. Whereas years and years ago, I would have just worked. I would have woken up, done some movement, and worked and worked and worked, not had lunch, not had breakfast, just worked until I felt hungry in the evening, eaten something, maybe eaten too much because I was famished, or
Mm-hmm.
not really thinking about what I was eating, just putting stuff in my mouth, thinking, oh my God, I'm so hungry. I have to kind of fuel up, working way into the night. So I
Mm-hmm.
really changed that on its head, and I understood about the circadian rhythm and how that kickstarts lots of processes, getting daylight into your eyes first thing. I understood that was a good thing. I incorporated that into my day. And then when I work in those bouts of focus and release, I make sure that I get it out of my system, because the most appropriate thing for you to do when cortisol rises in the system, and that's stress, or actually I call it your go. kind of go hormone, and you get it first thing in the morning, and it's like, get out of bed and get on with the day.
Yeah.
So it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. But when it rises and you're really focused, you're probably staying very, very still for, that 90 minutes or whatever the bout of working is. Well, unwittingly, you don't realize this, but what you're doing is you are mimicking an alarm signal to your system. So I don't call it stress, I call it an alarm or not alarm. And you're signaling alarm to your body. So if you look at the pose that you adopt when you're on a laptop, the back of the neck is truncated, the shoulders are up, you're typing away furiously, your eyes are fixed at a very short distance. That is mimicking the freeze response. Yeah. So you don't know that you're doing that because you're hugely focused. So when you come out of that, having this kind of set time that you focus, coming away from it and getting rid of it, be it a walk or playing with your dogs or cooking something. I have a whole heap of different activities I've got a reformer, I've got a mini trampoline, I have a punch bag, I go out and I walk, but I have a whole heap of things that I will do just to get rid of that hormone in my body so that I can reset and then I'll start again. Because what your brain does naturally throughout the day is it toggles between external sensory processing and internal reflection. Yeah. So it has this expansive, retractive quality. And we're always forcing it to be here all the time.
Out.
And that's exhausting. Out, expanding, taking in external sensory information all of the time. And it's a little bit like having your laptop on for weeks and weeks and weeks without powering it up again.
Down to like me falling asleep.
Yes, exactly. It's just going to wear out, your whole system. You're overclocking your system. And I don't want anyone to kind of think, oh my God, I scroll into the middle of the night. Just recognize that you do it. And then notice what happens when you don't do it. So I said to you, I had a great night's sleep because I'm really having to put in place, everything is so crazy right now. And I'm interested in things. But sometimes you have to ask, what is the point of feeding this information into my system when I have no control over it? I can't actually do anything about it, not right now. So I also think it's really good to understand that about yourself and to be able to retract. So I'm not saying retract from everything because I don't believe in spiritual bypassing.
Yeah.
Be in the world, engage with the world, but really think about what you need to do, what information you need, what action you can take, because that helps to discharge the cortisol as well, action, community, all of that stuff. So that last night, I have made a real concerted effort that there's a cutoff point in my day where I will not scroll. I'm like, I'm done. It's good. I know enough. Stop it. And so I'm being quite strict on myself because I can also get into these little things of where it just takes me over and I get very interested in something and then, it's just completely taking me over. But I also don't want to waste my time and I don't want to exhaust my system. So I'm constantly thinking in terms of what's going to nourish me and what's going to deplete me. And that's a really good way to think about things because then you don't really have rules, but then you will have things that you're drawn to that that will nourish you, going to bed a bit earlier or, having a nice shower or a walk in the evening, at dusk or something like that, or chatting to somebody as a way of processing your day, whatever it is. But you will then have a better understanding of what you need to thrive. But it's rituals throughout the day and it's letting go of your stress. And I work in my studio in the garden, and even the walk from here to my house, I will make sure that I've let go of my day, I've let go of my clients' concerns so that I'm not carrying it into my life.
I appreciate everything you just shared. I love that you use the word ritual and what it's a beautiful response to what I was asking, because what occurs to me and through this is it's not like doing less and then just like throwing it up to the wind. Like it's all of the intentionality and attention is said a different way. I spent my entire session with my therapist on Friday talking to him about how I see myself slip into an evening where I'm just on screens until I fall asleep. And I was like, gets a little scary because all of a sudden I'm only sleeping 5 hours a night and I'm not rested. And so we talked about he's like, walk me through your evening as of late. And I was like, this is going to be embarrassing because I'll maybe make dinner watching something, and then I'm like, no, get it off. And then I'm on it again. And then I'm like, no, stop. And then I'm in bed looking at the news. So it just spirals out of control.
Yeah.
And what was interesting about it is we talked about like what would be the ritual in the evening that you would enjoy. And I was
Yeah.
like, what we landed on, because I'm a creative, I'm an actress, I was like, you know what's funny? It feels so different to like watch one film. He's like, yeah,
Yeah.
they're not at all the same. Like you consuming content, scrolling, and watching one film they're not the same. And
No.
so what we landed on was like watch a film and sit with your notebook and a pen.
No.
And it's so interesting because I can be so black and white with like, well, like you have to live like a monk right now, and it's just not
Yes.
realistic. But I love what you walked through, that it's these like subtle but really intentional, personalized shifts that like honor us processing our life as we move through it.
You put that so beautifully. Yeah, exactly that. It's honoring the transitions between the things that we deem as activities, like formal activities. So you finish work and then maybe you slip into your personal life, whatever that looks like for you. But it's like, what do you do in between to let go of this persona and to enter into the next? And I work from home, as does my husband. And I think it's really important that neither of us brings our work stuff into the house, you know? It's fine to talk about things, of course it is. But when
Yeah.
you've finished your work, once upon a time, you might have a walk home, or you might have a commute back home again, or you might have some colleagues to talk to. It's really important that you don't suddenly dump everything that's happened on someone else without
Yeah.
processing it yourself. I feel,
Mm.
because we're so, our lives are so intertwined. And that includes, if you've read or seen something that's really horrific, to not inflict it on the other person who may be trying to avoid it for now. And so what we do is we'll go, at the weekends when we go for long walks, we'll talk about things that are going on there. And we're outdoors and we're walking. And so it doesn't kind of consume the whole house,
Yeah.
So having those rituals in between activities is probably one of the most powerful things that I've introduced into my world. And I've been doing that for quite a long time now. And it just means that when I go to bed, I'm not going to bed kind of really heightened with everything, including my work. But I've gone to bed having fully processed everything exactly as it happened throughout my day. And
Mm-hmm.
that is how your nervous system works. You can't kind of store something and go, we'll deal with that later, because your body's like, I'm feeling it now, you know?
Yeah.
So it's kind of dealing with it in the here and now and going, okay, look, I'm safe. I'm actually not in alarm. My physical surroundings are safe now, so I can just let go of those shoulders. I'm good. Let me just move it out of me. Let me breathe for a little bit. And now I'm ready to get on with the next thing. So you're kind of
Mm.
really bringing in new energy into the things that you want because you've let go of the old thing.
There's this feeling rather, as I hear how you talk about how you move through your life and your days, of like agency and autonomy and
Mm,
awareness. And I wanted to ask you to speak a little bit to the Soothe method in its simplicity. And what I mean by that is drawing this distinction with how the culture of self optimization and wellness and self care can actually, what I've learned is I've been looking at it over the last year, is like it's actually deceived me and kept me from myself. And
yes,
reckoning with that has been quite confronting.
yes.
So I'd love to hear you just reflect on that piece of it.
That's really beautifully put. And I also had that same realization, was like, well, of course I'm drawn to power yoga and hot yoga because I'm good at fast, I'm good at speed, I'm good at working hard. And all of those things speak to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Which is why we're drawn to them. And I don't know about you, when I first discovered yoga, I used to roll up my mat at Shavasana. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm done.
Oh,
Bye.
you didn't stay for it. That's great.
To my shame.
Yeah.
Um, and it kind of makes me giggle now because, of course, that was the best bit if you were
Mm-hmm.
really in it. But
Yeah.
I'm going to posit that I wasn't really ever in it. I was doing it, but I hadn't really arrived in any of those times. And so the Soothe program and the work that I do, so the human method is kind of what I do. And I named it such because I wanted to really differentiate what I do to just going to a yoga class and going through the motions, or a movement class and going through the motions. So it really is about movement as a regulatory practice, as opposed to, for fitness.
Mm-hmm.
And under that, I teach something called the Soothe program, which is 12 weeks. And it just guides you through all of the steps that I found that are really useful to get to know yourself better. And the very first step in it is just to understand the signals coming from your body, because your body will always respond first before your brain makes sense of it. And your brain will make sense of it based on your experience so far. So how you react to things that are challenging for you and how I react to things that are challenging for me will be different. Like, I still have, even though I feel I'm really kind of grounded now, I still, if something goes a little bit wrong, the very first thought in my head is like, if a dog runs away or something and it's got lost in the undergrowth and she won't come back, my very first thought, without even trying to formulate it, is, oh my God, so she's dead. Because I catastrophize. I've had a whole lifetime of catastrophizing because I expected the worst. My life has been pretty steady for quite a long time. And I realize I'm an adult and I'm in control of things. And, the dog running off and getting killed is not that likely. But I kind of recognize this old pattern, and it's an old pattern because if you remember, you don't unlearn things, you just layer it with new experiences. And so it always makes me giggle, when that thing comes up, and I kind of go, okay, that's not going to happen. We're good. Like, my shoulders are down. I can breathe because all I have to do is retrace my steps and I'm going to find her. So reading those signals from your body is probably the first step. And what that means is, if something's making you uncomfortable, you're going to know. You're going to know because the signals coming from your body will tell you, even though you might be in an environment where everyone else is normalizing that behavior, you will know. And I'm going to give you an example of that. Have you ever had that thing where your male friends will go, oh yeah, he's a really good guy, and all the women will go, he's a real wrong 'un. Yeah, don't trust him, don't like him, he's got really creepy vibes.
And then I've dated them anyways,
Yes,
unfortunately.
haven't we all? I know. Because, we kind of just thought, yeah, it's really good to be gaslit. This is like learning for me. Or maybe he knows better. Maybe I don't know my own mind. It's kind of tuning yourself back to the signals from your body that we have been groomed to quash down. Yeah, we've been groomed to quash those down. So that we're easy to sell things to. And unfortunately, the wellness world is part of that. So it gives people the things that keeps them coming back, keeps them buying more, and kind of keeps them in the same place. I often say to people, with all this talk about Deepak Chopra, I mean, he isn't the first, is he, guru to have been unseated. We've had Bikram, we've had the whole lineage of yoga teachers, the senior yoga teachers. I remember being quite a young yoga kind of devotee, and my friends who were in their 70s told me about Patabi Joyce, and all the rumors about him and how he used to touch women and so on and so on. It was known forever, and it's only really being talked about now. If your practice doesn't question the structures that keep all of this in place, then there's a problem with it, If you don't question the power structures that keep all of this in place, there's a problem with it. And I remember with Deepak Chopra, I remember just thinking, well, look, all of his clients are rich and wealthy. He will never, ever question them. And in fact, he'll be quite pleased that as an Indian man, he's now been welcomed into this elite ring of power and influence. And so he didn't ring true to me because as a guru, I mean, I don't really I don't really look up to gurus. That's not kind of my my thing at all. I find it very disempowering. Like, why would you give your power over to someone else? Why would you do that? But I just think I just think that whole thing was really interesting. So I didn't really ever get him. And I quite liked it when he spoke up about things when nobody else was. But I didn't, he wasn't my kind of person at all. And it's become really clear to me why that is. And it's because your inclusion, if your inclusion into a world can buy your silence, then where are your morals? Where is your spirituality? I don't, it makes no sense to me. And isn't it interesting how so many women, and I'm not actually having a go at anyone who fell for anyone's charms, because we've all been manipulated, right? So
Yeah.
I'm not saying it in the spirit of that. I'm just saying it in the spirit of, isn't it interesting that the culture can allow women to go along with it, even though we know there's something going on? And it was a bit the same with the Bikram thing, because in London, there was so many yoga studios, Bikram studios headed up by women. It was a great business for them. I get it, and then suddenly they found out that he was such a monster. Maybe they knew a little bit anyway, but they couldn't say anything because their businesses were built on the whole reputation of this absolute monster.
Yeah.
So it calls everything into question. And a little bit like you, I have called so many things into question. Teachers I thought that were great. I'm looking back now at this age thinking, oh my God, you were really creepy, or you really used your power over me in some way.
Yeah.
And I'm quite a strong woman. And even I couldn't stand up to it at the time, because our culture grooms us into turning back on the self. If anything's wrong, it's coming back to you. You're deficient, you're broken, you don't get it, you're not spiritual enough, you're not bendy enough, whatever it is, it always comes back to the self. And that does us all a disservice, because then we think that we must kind of yield, or we must shape ourselves around these messages that are being pumped out to us, when actually what a better thing to do is kind of go, well, why?
Yeah.
Or how does this work for me? Or why does it work? Or how can you have one rule that's a blanket rule for all these different bodies in the same class?
Yeah.
And on and on. So that's why I really love this work, because it isn't about obeying. It isn't about me telling you what to do, but it's me kind of guiding you and kind of going, well, what do you feel? What do you sense? And does it feel wrong for you? Often people say, am I doing it right? My answer to you will be, well, how does it feel?
You tell me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You
I'm not in your body. I can tell you how I feel when I do this movement, but I don't know. I'm not in your body. And that makes it incredibly empowering. So it's kind of mapping the signals from your body. It's then building in a recovery gap between something happening to you and you doing something, you taking an action to neutralize it before you move on to the next thing. It's kind of really thinking about the transitions in your life. And a lovely word that you use that is one of my favorite words ever is being intentional. It's fine if you're doing something, maybe one day you need to scroll. Maybe that just is how the day went. Don't beat yourself up. Do something else next time. Understand how it made you feel, and then kind of the next time do something else. And I love that your therapist said to watch a film, because funnily enough, I was watching a few episodes in the winter. It's quite a good chance to catch up with episodic things. But you know how they feed you? You watch one and they feed you the next and the next,
it's
and
bad.
you think, oh my God. And then they do the recap at the beginning. So you're kind of looking at the same information again and again and again.
And then I'm like, do I live in, like, I'm more consciously in the world of a show. We know this now. It's designed to be addictive.
Of course.
And it's fun, but it works. And I know that, and I'm watching it work. But I love, you also use the word obedience, which I think is really confronting, because it forced me to be like, oh yeah, that is the posture that these systems and this culture had me in. And one of the things with all of the Deepak and the Epstein files and to me, it feels like our culture is like reckoning upon reckoning upon reckoning right now. One of the most, for lack of a better word, like validating statements I saw was like, this is all coming to the surface, but it's not, it didn't just happen. This has been happening. This has been in existence. And whether it's looking at like the obedience in the yoga world, these unchecked power structures, it made me reflect on my experience in the corporate world. Like I worked at some of the biggest corporations in the country and in the world. And I worked under a man that like you were told, just get through the meeting and just ask him about himself and get him talking about himself. Don't worry. I know you spent 3 months preparing that presentation, but just get through it. I love what you said, that culture is designed to perpetuate us outsourcing our felt sense of truth, put it a different way. And
Yeah,
it's, yeah.
completely. Lots of my clients, don't forget, Catherine, are people who work in that corporate culture, and they're at the head of their game. And it's completely crippling them. It's completely destroying them. You know, they can't sleep. They don't know who they are. They're not having fun in it. And their Uber bosses are people who are toxic because the system's toxic. So all the stuff that they have to deal with because they're not obedient. You get to your 40s and your 50s in the
Yeah, you
corporate
don't.
world.
Someone sent me, actually, a lovely mentor and dear friend who hired me, when I was in my mid-20s. She sent me an article on Friday when we caught up, and I was like, what do you think's happening? And I have to read it, but it was like women running out of fucks to give.
Yes.
She's like, at some age, you don't have any more to deploy.
You
which I thought
don't,
was
because
great.
life gets real. Maybe you're coming up to the perimenopause. Maybe
Yeah.
you've had kids and that's kind of pulling you in all directions. Maybe you realize you've got this great big important job, but it's the money's not going very far. Or whatever it is, the dream isn't as shiny as it was once kind of sold to you. And I think so many women are kind of leaving the corporate world because it's just not working for them. And actually, in your 50s, there's a real high incidence of women setting up their own businesses because they just don't want to work in that kind of environment anymore.
You're getting at something that I feel strongly about, which is this sense of intentionally returning to ourselves. I want to get at the spiritual bypassing of it all, because this conversation is strengthening my conviction that we do this to engage with the world.
Yes.
And the younger us that was like, I guess this is success and contributing to society. It's like, no, we're reclaiming what that means to us and how we want to move forward with that. But however you want to respond, because I think you're making that point well.
So I think I got into trouble with all of my male teachers because I would question their intention. My questions, they felt, was questioning their intention.
Yeah.
And they did not want to allow that. So they then said that I remember one teacher saying to me, well, the problem with you is women don't like you. And I was like, that's so untrue. All women like me. My friends are women. It's like, how could you even say that? And I remember saying to him, I think the problem with you is that women don't like you. Do you know what I mean? It's like, how do you know that? You know nothing about people because you're such a sociopath in the yoga world. It's like incredible. And so I've suddenly realized that the things that I thought I'm not enough for this practice, I now realize that practice didn't really allow for everything that's going on. It was a really, it was a very limited scope. You were allowed to feel this, do this practice, and you will feel different, but you're not then allowed to widen that lens into the wider world. And of course, I can't help but mention Gaza. And for me, that was a real line that really drew the line in the sand between the people who said they were the same as me and kind of, they had all the words for empathy and, and liberation or kind of solidarity and human rights. And then suddenly their empathy was really selective and you weren't allowed to fully go there. And that freaked me out. That completely freaked me out. So that I've had a real kind of like,
That,
what
like,
do you mean we're not all on the same side?
That compartmentalization.
Yeah, it just that was my, I've had little freakouts throughout my life where I'm like, oh my God, what I thought was true. And I thought we were all in this kind of thing. I realize now that you mean to cause me harm in this world, in the spiritual world, the well-being world. That was always shocking whenever I met it. But then this thing that's happening now with selective empathy and practitioners who are mirroring and parroting the same language of oppressors is really frightening to me, and frightening that I didn't see it before. There's a really good saying, which is just because somebody's in well-being doesn't mean that they mean well, and that's so true. I kind of wish I had known all of that before I went into all of this, because it would have probably given me a bit more grounding. But you know what? As ever, what happens in the world is you learn through experience, and also you get older, you get to understand yourself better, and you can stick up for yourself, and you're not afraid to have those conversations with other women, because
Right.
we've all got stories, and once we share the stories, we're like, oh, actually,
Right.
this is real, it's happening. We're not our responses, our sensations in our body aren't lying to us. I feel threatened here, or I feel this person isn't true or authentic. So I think, going back to listening to the signals from your body is kind of the first step of really getting to um, the root of what's happening in any given situation. And then you can query that. You can go, well, hang on a minute, let me look at the evidence. Am I actually safe? Am I physically safe here? If not, get out. And if I
Mm-hmm.
am, what else is going on? What else is it about this situation that makes me feel in a bit of an alarm state?
Yeah.
And so you're feeding information, and then you're kind of processing that information. And I think that is exactly how we operate, how we function biologically.
Mm-hmm.
So then it doesn't feel like a mindset work. It doesn't feel like you're imposing something on yourself. You're actually attuning to yourself, if you like. You're connecting back in and going, okay, what is it that I want here? And
Mm-hmm.
it's really beautiful once it starts to unfold. And maybe at the beginning, you do have to put some rituals in place, and then it becomes your everyday. Like now, I just wouldn't dream of working on something for 90 minutes, or working with a client and not moving afterwards. It's so in my bones now.
Yeah. I love what you said about like, wow, I wish I knew this then.
Yeah,
And I have to say, even the last month, I had a little bit of that reckoning with everything unfolding in this country with ICE, and especially in Minneapolis. And
I know.
to that point, what happened for me was twofold. One, I had this like collective awareness of like, how are we all not, and the like gurufication sometimes that happens in the wellness world. I think there was a reckoning looking at that and being like, wait, you're not speaking directly to reality and to
Yeah,
truth.
yeah,
And not only was I like, that is deeply cowardly and problematic, but I'm
yeah,
also seeing how susceptible I was to this like hyper individualized individualism.
yeah,
And for me, through the lens of what was happening in the world and in this country, and how that culture kind of avoided speaking directly to it, I had this like, oh, I've been really susceptible to something that has gaslit me in a way about my own experience, and maybe said, a different lens on it, which you've pointed to, is it's validated my belief that like, no, I'm supposed to be enraged. Like,
yes,
I'm supposed to allow the gamut of all of this to be processed. We're supposed to feel all of it. We're
yeah.
supposed to
We are supposed
engage
to
with
feel
all of
it's a
it.
little bit like that myth. I wonder if you had it over there of not discussing your salary. You
Oh,
know?
yeah.
Yeah, so we were
Yeah.
brought up, you don't talk about, your salary. Who put that about? Well, the
Yeah.
people who are paying men more than women. That's
Yeah.
who, you know? And there was a movement a few years ago here where journalists, lots of people were just saying, this is how much I earn. Or influencers were saying, I got this job, this is how much I earn. And lots of people were sharing that and saying, well, if you aren't getting this, then you need to complain about it, because this is how much I get and I'm a white
Yeah.
woman. And there was a
Yeah.
really lovely kind of allyship and solidarity. And we just need more and more of that, because when we lose that connection with our nervous system, we also lose our capacity to feel and choose differently. Yeah.
Mm.
So when you're
Hmm.
not connected to yourself, you're going to think the same. And please don't berate yourself that you were fooled by someone or manipulated by someone,
Right.
because it's not just gaslighting, it's propaganda. You
Mm.
know, gaslighting is too light a word for it. This is like hard
That's well
propaganda.
said.
If you
Yeah.
connect all the dots in the Epstein thing, look at all the players in this. They are tech bros. They are
Hmm.
stealing our data. They are accessing, on a government level, they're accessing all of our files. Lord knows what they're going to do with it. But they
Hmm.
are super embedded, both here as well in the UK. They're kind of
Hmm.
embedded in our NHS as our free health system, and so on and so on. So it's not just a light gaslighting, someone telling you that your hair doesn't suit you. This
Right.
is big time. This is big forces, big money behind this. So, don't berate yourself. In fact,
Yeah.
congratulate yourself that you have now the ability to see clearly,
Yeah.
and let's all do something with that. So, what I love about this work, it starts with the self. You connect to yourself, then you
Yep.
start connecting and hearing other people's stories, and you're connecting with your friends, with your community, and then we take it wider. And there's a collective care for everyone, because as you say, I've seen the awful things happening. In Minneapolis and everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
We're following it very keenly here, and it's just heart-wrenchingly awful,
Yeah.
and is no different to what happened in Nazi Germany, people
Yeah.
being taken off the streets. It's like so serious. There really is a huge need for
Yeah.
collective care and this solidarity and humanity with each other at this moment in time. And
Yep.
you'll be able to access that by accessing how you really feel about things.
Yeah. And I feel like you really well embody the idea of like we take care of self so that we
So
can
that
be
it
in the
has to,
world.
it has to
Yeah.
be in context. And I fear that the self and self optimization is just us out of context with the
Mm-hmm.
rest of humanity. But if everything is in context, with why am I doing that? Who is this good for? How does this serve me? How does it serve the world that I want to live in? Then it just becomes a much more hopeful, integrated kind of practice, right? And
Yeah.
pertinent. It becomes really pertinent rather than thinking I'm going to go and lie over a bolster to recover from this,
Yeah.
whatever's going on. You're actually doing something, again, the word intentional. You're doing something that's intentional to move us all towards something that is much better than this, is the hope.
And I in a time that can feel quite helpless, like
Yeah.
how do you keep the belief and the optimism through your work? Like what keeps you going in days like this?
So, I just want to be clear. I have hugely dark moments,
Mm-hmm.
but I drop into my rituals. I know, for instance, that I have in winter, it's very dark here in the UK in the winter. So I know that I have a real tendency to go in, like I have this lovely studio. I really enjoy my work. I do a lot of research. I have lots of things that I move around a lot. So all the things I love doing are contained in this. So I have a tendency to remove myself from people.
Mm.
So I have decided to, start including, always take the dogs out in the afternoon, and I make myself walk through town where you can have little side of the mouth conversations with people. I just realized that would be better for my kind of mental health. So I put in lots of little rituals that I make sure that I do. And also, Catherine, can I just say, connecting with people like you. I'm
Mm.
loving it. I've suddenly, in the turmoil of all of this, I've met some amazing people who are talking about it in the context of wellness. So that makes
Yeah.
me feel less alone. And hopefully you feel less alone.
Big
And then
time.
whoever's listening, it will make them feel less alone. So they're not sitting there going, oh my God, I feel like I'm going mad.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's other people who feel like this, and that's incredibly empowering, isn't it? I have a really strong need for joy every single
Mm-hmm.
day. So I'll build in these little moments of joy. I'm not sure I believe in happy, but I do
Mm.
believe in kind of building joy, because happy
So
again is a fixed state, and I'm not sure that's. I think that actually causes suffering to want to always be happy.
sometimes happy feels like a lot of pressure. Like, am I
Yes,
happy? I don't know.
yes.
Yeah, I
It
like that
does, and also it's
distinction.
it's a fixed state, and I don't think we want to get into that. But actually
Mm-hmm.
building small moments of joy, having good conversations. And I'm gonna go back to your series versus a
Please.
film. I'm the same. I have started watching a film where I can really embed into this one
Yeah.
story without lots of adverts and without lots of recaps and without lots of pulling me in, but it's one beautiful story. And last night's was Andrea Arnold's Wuthering Heights.
Oh, did you see? Oh, what?
So I
That's
saw Emerald Fennell's one on Saturday, and I
yeah.
loved it. I thought it was fabulous. But on
Yeah.
Sunday, I watched the Andrea Arnold one, which is much grittier, and it's
Interesting.
it's very British. It's on the Yorkshire moors, and it's a real counter, an antidote to the Emerald Fennell one. And I enjoyed
Yeah.
them both.
You know, I haven't seen it, but I did love Saltburn, and it made me. I was like, you know what? Creatives in the UK, they go there.
Really go there. Did
I'm
you
a
see
big
her first film? Promising Woman.
No. Oh, yes. Yes. Yeah. You know what's funny? I watched it with my grandmother and my mother like a year ago. And I was like, they were like, what? I was like, oh, this is darker than I remember. Excellent. She goes there. She
She
goes
goes
there.
there. And actually, that's why we watch things and we read things, isn't it? It's kind of like, what do you think about the world? Give me your
Yeah.
vision of the world. What are you feeling? What are you thinking? I love it for all those reasons.
I agree. I will say, to just nod to another British program, Industry. Have you seen Industry?
So,
So I
so
have to
good.
say, like, my kryptonite as I process my 10 years in the corporate world is watching shows like that like really just are like, no, this is, because while it maybe is hyperbolic in moments, the power mechanics are exactly it, you know?
I was involved in the technology industry for 7 years, just as
Yeah.
the World Wide Web came
Yeah.
about. So it was like a real boom time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like that. It was just like industry. There was so much money. Actually, on that, another one that I love was Succession. Did you follow that?
Yeah, of course.
So good. So good. And that's
It's
a really good play out of all the power
it
going on in the
is.
world, isn't it? There's a
It
really brilliant
is.
thing where someone says to Shiv, it was her sort of lefty ex-boyfriend,
Yeah.
says to her, "Aren't you ashamed?" And she said, "The problem is you think we feel shame."
And
And it's
then
like, that's right now. That's exactly what's
it's
happening.
exactly right now. As dark as those shows are, there's, to what you said, it's like the validation of the thing I sensed was off 10 years
Yes.
ago. And you're like,
Yeah.
they're speaking truth to power. And it's the truth that I felt all along.
Yeah.
It's also why art is so important.
So important. And also that you going to your acting classes, that thing of making sense of one's life. Like I took up roller skating here, so I'm learning to jam skate. I'm so bad at it. No, rhythm skate. I'm really
Yeah.
bad at it, but I'm doing it. And it's so fun because I used to really love going out dancing.
Yeah.
And so you just dance, the guy plays some really brilliant tunes and you just learn to do little moves on your roller skates. It's just so super fun. So doing something that's fun, that has some meaning for you, that gives you the meaning that maybe your work might not,
Yep.
or gives you a escape from it as well. So important. And we've really lost that. I was just saying to a friend of mine the other day, when my parents were young, they had hobbies. And
Mm-hmm.
all my friends now who've got kids, there is no time for hobbies.
Mm-hmm.
They work all hours. They're running their kids around to lots of different after school activities. Everyone's so busy. It's
Yeah.
interesting, isn't it? That we make no time for engaging our other parts of brains in something that more creative. I think that's to our detriment.
Yeah, and it's like it is almost like looking, like, what if we didn't see ourselves and our lives through the lens of productivity and the
Yes.
lens of like we need to get to something and then we'll relax. I feel like that's a facade that in my conversations on this podcast, like, I find people continuing to challenge. They're like, wait,
Yeah,
what,
absolutely.
because when is that destination
Yes.
that, you know?
And I think that's a beauty of women in their midlife is because they realize it ain't going to happen and it's all been a lie.
Yeah.
And they're like, right, I'm going to burn this down. So I think that's
Yeah.
the interesting thing about what's happening right now is because I think the change will come. I mean, it's got to come from women. Surely, if women don't wake up now and do something about it, then we are
Yeah.
doomed. But I think the anger is going to come from there because we've been duped.
This idea of like the younger you and how your life and your work has evolved, or what would she think of your life now?
I think it would be really alien to her, but I think she'd be super proud that it was all okay, that the heat and the energy and the wanting to get somewhere kind of all went somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I think actually she'd also be quite pleased that I am alive
Mm.
and I'm in the pleasant time of my life. When I was young, I ran away from anything that was pleasant. I was really drawn to drama and because I thought that was passion. And I realized it was dysregulation because I'd never known what it was to be calm and to be
Yeah.
comfortable and to feel to feel at ease. I'd never known that. So I think she'd be like, ah, there it is. you know?
Mm. Your work. offers the idea that like we can find the calm and create the calm for us, and it's not attached to something external. And
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely. And that was really born out of not just my busy mind and my very tight hips and not enjoying sitting low on a cushion, but also my clients who had bipolar. Last
Mm-hmm.
thing they want to do is sit still.
Yeah.
Or clients with ADHD, last thing they want to do is sit still. So I think, teaching people over the years has also made me realize, oh, hang on a minute, I'm not deficient. I just have likes and dislikes, as we all
Yeah.
do. And that's what your nervous system is. You have trained it to like some things and not like other things, which is perfectly reasonable, ask of
Mm-hmm.
it. But actually, here's something I think that's really empowering. If you understand that your nervous system is built, and your brain's part of the nervous system, it's built not just to keep you alive, but to always find the easy route, the path of
Mm.
least resistance. So actually, it's built for pleasure.
Mm.
And isn't that great? It's kind of built,
Yeah.
all you need to do is get out your own way and just
Yeah.
let it be, because it's built for pleasure, it's built for ease, it's built for comfort.
Yeah.
So let that be.
In my work right now, it's not practical for everyone to leave the thing that's keeping them
No,
busy and
yes, I
dysregulated.
completely
Like
recognize that.
how do you meet that person? Because a lot of your work is not someone, or I'm making an assumption, but meeting them in their circumstances that they exist in. So
Yeah.
what is like the simple offering to that person that, me a few years ago would be like, must be nice to be able to bring
Yeah.
intentionality, but there's too much to do.
Of course. Well, don't forget I was that person as well.
Yeah.
I just thought me being still or quiet would mean that I lost my ambition and also my sense of my identity.
Mm-hmm.
So the overriding thing to remember is that when you're well regulated, when you regulate yourself, you're also regulating your environment.
Yeah.
And so if we understand that, we will also understand that being able to manage your emotions in some way, and I don't mean control, I mean dealing with them, getting them out, yeah? Because
Mm-hmm.
there's a heat of emotion, isn't there? That's about, there's like a real intensity. Like if you're angry, you're like, rah, and then it kind of goes. And it's the when it goes that you can make a good, rational, sane decision. You can't do it in the heat of the moment.
Yeah.
And so if in your working life, you're kind of silently kissing your teeth because somebody said something silly, or, you're rolling your eyes, or everything's making you suffer. If you understand that you can deal with that emotion, you can get it out, and then you can kind of go, okay, what can I do in this moment? Immediately, the person that you're having to deal with you'll kind of unarm them, because they'll
Mm-hmm.
be like, whoa, she's coming now from a place of real groundedness, and she's not
Yeah.
tetchy with me, so I don't have to be tetchy with that. So from a purely self-centered, and why wouldn't it be? It always starts from the self. So I didn't mean that as disparaging, but from a
Yeah.
purely kind of self-preservation way, when you're well regulated, your interactions with other people will be calmer, nicer, more pleasant.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's so much more that unfolds from that. And so you could just do really easy things like, listen in, figure out what environments make you thrive, what environments make you feel unsafe. And then
Yeah.
you can make sure that you're gearing towards that. What kind of working relationships make you thrive, gear towards that. So this whole thing of understanding yourself better and being in better relationship with yourself will give you intention for how to live,
Yeah.
even in that corporate world. When you do this work, you can't put yourself in bubble wrap against awful things happening or
Right.
challenging things happening. That's not the point of it. My teaching is very much about being in the real world, being in the world that you
Yeah.
inhabit, being in your experiences exactly as you are and exactly as you meet them, but having one step back so that you
Mm-hmm.
can get a bit more curious. Because even somebody's anger at you, you can get curious about. And I'll give you an example. So somebody I'm working with is kind of heading up a big global franchise. It's in the
Mm-hmm.
entertainment business, and we've just realized, we were talking about this last week, that all the studio bosses are part of what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
are. They're from that culture. They've lived that life. So no wonder they hate women at the head telling them what to do, and they'll strip them down. And I was just saying to her, so that it's not about you.
Mm-hmm.
it's about them and the structures they're used to, and maybe losing a bit of a grip, and maybe seeing these fabulous younger women like you coming with an idea and an opinion, and you've got good work to back you up. I said it's not about you, because I think oftentimes what people think is when they hear something that is seen as a criticism, they suddenly go to the self and think, oh my God, my identity is wounded. I've wounded my sense of self is wounded. But it isn't. It's more about the other person. When you understand that, you can also choose which battles are worth your time. Instead of deciding that every
Yeah.
single battle that you're going to take on in your corporate world is all about you standing up for yourself as a woman. But actually, you can then just go, hang on a minute, I'm not going to win that or that or that. They just want to do it. I'm being paid to make decisions. I'm going to have to let it go. This one thing is quite important to me. So let's take this one thing on. So it
Yeah.
means that you just give yourself a much easier life, and you're not taking on the battle of the genders in everything you're doing, or the battle of classes, or whatever it is that is your battle. You're not
Yep.
taking it all on. You're just able to meet things exactly as they are and kind of figure out what's important to you and what isn't.
And maintain some authorship, because
Yes.
I
Yeah.
remember this frustration from my corporate days. I was like, well, they're not going to the unconscious bias training with all the, like, the people, and said in the container of your work, they're not doing the regulation work. And I can't force that.
No, you can't. But what you can do is you can make someone feel really silly for losing their
Their
temper
shit.
over
Yeah.
something. Yeah, their shit over something. You can make them, because them losing their shit and you kind of kowtowing to that is their power, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if you don't, and you're kind of completely embodied and you're in your thing and you're going, okay, let's just talk when you want to talk. Yeah, let's talk when it's a better time for you. What is that going to do to someone? They're just going to go, oh my God, I feel like a idiot.
Yeah.
I've just lost my shit and I feel like an idiot. you know,
That's lovely.
isn't it?
That's a good tool. Let me know when there's a better time to talk.
Yeah.
And then it's like holding up a little bit of a mirror.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, and why wouldn't you? And it's
Yeah.
not, you're also not being, and because we have to be careful, don't we, as women, that we're not seen as being antagonistical, because that can
Mhm.
then erupt in our faces. We're constantly tiptoeing around people's egos often, and that's how we're brought up. But that's such a lovely way of kind of going, it's really you, not me.
Yeah, I know I want to say too, just to that, it is still like honoring your anger, like
Of course.
and the inherent reaction that's going to come up, but in a way that allows you to like use your curiosity to harness it.
And also to keep your dignity and to
Yeah.
keep yourself intact, so that
Mhm.
somebody else's response hasn't robbed you of something.
Mhm.
That's quite important, isn't it? So they
Mhm.
don't steal energy, and they don't steal your dignity, and they don't steal, your authorship is a lovely word. They don't
Mm.
steal any of that. You're still you, you're standing in your space, and you're just like, hey, we can talk another time when it's more suitable.
Man, and it makes me think of all the moments where I've outsourced and said inherent internally, "Oh, they must be right." Like
Yeah.
they
Yeah,
they
and do you know what? We have all done it. We have all done it, and people continue
Mhm.
to do it. I work with women in the corporate world who are really high up, and it messes them up. I often joke,
Mhm.
Catherine, that what I do is teach women how to repair from the ravages of capitalism.
It's good.
Late stage capitalism, because
Yeah.
it harms us all, men, women, it harms us all. No one loves it. So
Well said. Well said. Well, I'm so grateful to you because, as I said during this, you articulate your work in a way that is accessible and impactful. And you, just as you practice what you preach, you bring it into the context of the world and reality. And I'm really appreciative. I'd love to end with just a few fun rapid fire ones,
go for it.
if you're up for it.
Yeah.
Okay. What is a ritual or practice that keeps you you?
A ritual or practice that keeps me me. I'm a little bit mischievous, so every single
Mm.
day I have a little rule that I have to do something slightly mischievous that I don't tell anyone about ever.
Oh, that's fun. What would your 8-year-old self say to you today?
She'd be so ecstatic that I've got 2 Boston Terriers. She'd be like, "Oh, my dream life."
Yeah. What would your 80-year-old self say to you?
My 80-year-old self would say to me, "I did good. You did good. You did
That's
good.
great.
You did good, and you can still bend down and do your own shoelaces up. Way to go."
Perfect. This is like a fill in the blank.
Yeah.
I used to think blank, and now I know, or now I believe blank.
I used to think women were the weaker sex, and now I know we should be ruling the world.
Nothing else. Don't need to add anything on to that. Do I have one more? Yeah. What is a truth about the season of life you're in right now?
Oh gosh, women, it's such a great place to be. Menopause has so been pathologized. And
Mm,
actually, it's where we get our power. And there's a funny Ayurvedic kind of truth, which is that women get the menopause because it prepares you for the next stage of your life, prepares you for afterlife. So you can get enlightened now. And men never have it. So they're randy old goats for the rest of their life, and that is their suffering.
oh, that's funny.
Mm.
Yeah, I have to imagine it's like when you can lean into the experience of it, you're like, it's the experience of transition.
Of transitioning. It's
Hmm.
great. In the corporate world, it's an encumbrance, of course, because the corporate world is an encumbrance to being human. Um,
Yeah,
but if you had the space and the time to just kind of travel through it, you'll be good, you'll be fine.
yeah,
And it brings you to a really great place because you really don't put up with shit.
well said.
Yeah,
And then how I will share everything in the show notes, but
sure.
how should people find you and in your incredible work?
So actually, the thing that I'm really super proud of is my Substack, and it's
Mm,
called the Soothe Club.
yeah.
And you can just sign up to it for free, and you'll get all my tips and things. And you can come along to. I interview lots of great women, so you're going to be on the list, Catherine.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and just ask them the 3 things they would do if they were in charge, and then and
Mm,
lots of other kind of interesting things about recommendations. But if you pay a little money, it's about £10 a month. You get a
mm-hmm.
live monthly session with me. You get little audio sessions every week. And it's just a really good way to kind of check into yourself in a quite an affordable way. So
Oh,
that's
that's
probably the
awesome.
first place that people should come to keep in touch.
And can we I promise this will be the last one, end
Go for
with
it.
what are the 3 things that you would do if you were in charge?
Oh, really easy. So I would make it an offense for any politician to lie or incite hatred, number one.
Yeah.
I would make sure that any representation of the population is a true representation of the society. So you have women, you
Mm,
have trans, you have LGBTQI, you have a really good representation of the people that you want to govern over. And then a 4-day week with a basic living wage for
yeah.
everyone, which is 2 things, but I'm going to wrap them into one thing.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. Ooh, I love that. I love
And for
that.
me, when we talk about wellness, how can we
Mm-hmm.
consider any of it if people don't have human rights or healthcare for
Yeah.
free? I mean, when I
Yeah.
found out that US you didn't get free healthcare, I was so shocked. I was so shocked. It's still spoken of in Europe as like, how did we
Yeah.
ever hold up the US as a working society if they don't, civilization, if they don't give free healthcare? It's insane.
Totally. And part of the decision to like build my business and career outside of the corporate world is that's like the hardest thing. It's been one of the most
Yeah,
frustrating things to figure out.
I honestly had no idea the impact of that. I actually thought operations you had to pay for, but even the most basic of everything, and you know that your prescription charges are you're the highest. You're the highest in the
Yeah.
world. We don't pay
Yeah.
that amount for our prescription, so it's it's really shocking to me. Anyway, that's
Yeah.
maybe we'll add that as a fourth thing. Maybe that could
Yeah,
be the thing
right?
when you're in charge. But yeah, I can
Yeah.
imagine the anxiety one must feel to not be, to be not be covered if you
Yeah.
try
No,
and make that amount. Yeah.
it's quite the time to be alive, and it's quite the time to like, whether it's on a personal or communal or a global scale, like look at assumptions we've inherited about this is the way things are, and question them.
Yeah,
So
I agree. I agree. I'm glad to have met many people, yourself included, where we're able to have the conversation. When I came to LA to promote my book, I was so pleasantly surprised that lots of people were speaking up about things. I was like, oh, well, what we hear about LA and wellness is quite
right,
different to what
right,
I actually experienced. And of course, it's going to be different because the people aren't their governments. I know that. But you forget
yeah,
that, don't you, until you're there. And you're kind of like, oh my God, this is really quite amazing to be having these
yeah,
conversations. And I love that. I love that. Mustn't get into the thing of deriding the whole wellness world, because it's given me so many opportunities, and there's so many
totally,
good people in it. There's so many good
totally.
people in it.
I
They
think
just
it,
generally don't have the bigger platforms, but it's cool. We can find them.
and I find too, like, if one person widens the lens or brings
Yeah,
in a question, other people are like, yeah, I want to, yeah. Like
exactly that.
there's this assumption that nobody wants to go there, but we just haven't gone there. And so
Exactly that.
let's go
Exactly
there.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
Thank you so much for doing this today.
Thank you so much. It was a real pleasure, and thank you for asking me.
Of course. I hope you leave this episode with something that stays with you, a question worth holding, or an insight worth following. If this conversation resonated, subscribing or sharing the episode helps bring more people into the conversation. And connect with The Truth Is at The Truth Is Podcast on Instagram. Special thanks to the people who make this show possible. Editing by Dan Kroll. Video production and editing by Anton LaPlume. Music by Will Savino. Visual identity by Sarah Gaynor and Jonathan Bush. And guidance from my friend and advisor, Natalie Tulloch. I'm Catherine Flashner. Thank you for listening to The Truth Is.